Chapter 10, Presentation Platforms by Jim Stovall. As we have stated previously, the most important part of any presentation is clearly defining the message. Once your message is boiled down to a single concept, then you have a myriad of options as to how to present your message. It is easy to become intimidated or discouraged when we see other people's presentations, particularly if their method is one that is not comfortable to us. I am in the message business. The work I do in movies, television, books, radio, columns, and speeches represents different avenues and methodologies for presenting my message. It might appear that I have a wide variety of channels by which I present my message. While this might be true, there are many more methods of presenting that are not my strengths or chosen paths than the handful of methods I utilize. My average speech runs approximately an hour and is generally delivered to thousands of people in an arena or a large convention center. Unless my audience connects with me after my presentation or reads my books, watches my movies or TV programs, follows my weekly columns, or listens to me on the radio, I may never have any further interaction with them. My presentation to my normal audience is therefore a monologue. My audience hears from me, but I do not hear from them or even know who they are in the course of my presentation. I have a talented colleague named Rebecca Graham, whom I work with from time to time in some specialized presentations I do. Rebecca is predominantly a facilitator. Although she occasionally makes speeches to large groups of people, her talent and preferred presentation method revolves around workshops and small interactive day-long or multi-day sessions. There are long portions of Rebecca's events in which the participants present the majority of the time. I believe that in many cases, the most valid information that people receive from a presentation is information they already had, but they have come to a new understanding of or perspective on. One of the collaborations Rebecca and I present from time to time is based upon my book, Ultimate Productivity. I wrote Ultimate Productivity in conjunction with Coach John Wooden, and the foreword was written by Steve Forbes. Ultimate Productivity deals with success through motivation, communication, and implementation. Everyone has different preferences and styles in how they are motivated, best communicated with, and prefer to implement. These strengths or preferences are invariably reflected in how every individual would make a presentation. We developed a productivity profile, an online assessment for people who read the Ultimate Productivity book or attend the events Rebecca and I present. If you and your colleagues or family members would like to take the productivity profile and get your own free assessment pertaining to your strengths and preferences in motivation, communication, and implementation, simply go online to ultimateproductivity.com and use the access code 586404, 586404. This can be a powerful tool in developing your presentation style and in determining what type of presentation may be most impactful to your audience. There are many ways to motivate people through your presentations. People are motivated by a myriad of factors, including inspiration, causes, money, recognition, inclusion, and status. None of these are any more or less valid than the others. But if you're trying to motivate people using financial rewards when they are clearly attracted to causes and inspiration, you will likely fail. The way you communicate in presenting your message is critical, but it's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. I have written 30 books to date, with 10 million copies in print in several dozen languages. My columns are read by several million people each week throughout 3 continents. But I remain keenly aware that there are many people who will never be reached with my message via a written presentation. These people might instead watch one of my movies, listen to me on the radio, or attend one of my speaking engagements. Implementation styles are also an important part of how you make a presentation. There are some people who are linear in how they learn, while others need diversions, distractions, and multimedia input. There are some people who need to read about your message on a page or screen, while others need to interact or have an experience. Just as in motivation and communication, there are no right or wrong answers for everyone when it comes to implementation. But if you don't determine the appropriate format, your presentation can be doomed before it begins. Almost 20 years ago, I was giving a speech in a magnificent outdoor amphitheater overlooking the ocean in Maui, Hawaii. One of the thousands of people in my audience that day was a gentleman named Brian Clemmer. Brian contacted me several weeks later and asked me to speak for 200 people who would be attending a week-long event he was presenting known as the Compassionate Samurai. I told Brian I was in the habit of speaking to thousands of people for approximately an hour at single-day events, and his week-long workshop format didn't seem to fit my message or my mission. Brian explained to me that his audience was unique, and if I could impact them, I could impact many multiple thousands of people because he told me people who attend the Compassionate Samurai events are influencers. The theory is that there are people in the world who are compassionate. They have good hearts and benevolent intentions, but often lack the resources to widely spread the good work they are committed to doing. Then there are other kinds of people who are like samurai warriors. They are powerful and influential, but often do not have a focus on improving the world and benefiting everyone who lives in it. Brian's Compassionate Samurai events were designed to bring these two groups of people together for a week of experiential presentations. Other than my opening speech, the majority of the week-long presentation at the Compassionate Samurai events involve attendees experiencing the world and other people through a series of exercises. This presentation involves diverse activity, such as rock climbing, building a Habitat for Humanity house, going to a soup kitchen in an impoverished area, and other thought-provoking experiences. Over the ensuing years, I have spoken at over 40 of the Compassionate Samurai events. They have expanded my presentation and given me the ability to extend my message in new and different ways. My friend Brian Clemmer passed away several years ago, but his dedicated and talented team at Clemmer and Associates carry on his legacy and present week-long Compassionate Samurai events several times each year. All of us need to think about the legacy of our presentations. I'm a firm believer that when we learn something, we can change our lives. And when we teach something, we can change another person's life. But when we teach people to teach, we can change the world. A great presenter remains aware of the fact that his message can be passed on by others and create a legacy of learning far beyond his or her life. Your presentation platform and method will vary depending on your audience. Each week, I do 2 radio broadcasts based upon my weekly syndicated column. One of the radio broadcasts goes out to dozens of stations throughout the country on the USA Network. The other radio broadcast is on a local station in my hometown. On the national broadcast, I have to remember that my audience is massive and diverse. While we can discuss national or international issues of the day, I cannot refer to local weather, regional issues, or hometown politics on the nationwide radio broadcast. However, on the local broadcast in my hometown, we regularly talk about the road conditions in our city, local sports teams, and weather conditions. Understanding and remembering the makeup of your audience is an ongoing part of every presentation. My books have been translated into dozens of languages and distributed throughout the world. I regularly hear from readers who live in countries that I had literally never heard of before they contacted me. Periodically, I interact with the talented professionals who translate my books into various languages. I am constantly reminded that just because you translate into a language does not mean you have translated your message into another culture. I remember writing about a character in one of my books, and I described him as having a tiger by the tail. While this phrase may be familiar and descriptive to people in North America, I learned from a Mandarin translator who called me from China that she and all of my Chinese readers would have no clear understanding of having a tiger by the tail. In fact, she informed me that many of my readers throughout Asia, for whom she would be translating, were located in areas where tigers are indigenous, and those readers would have a quite different understanding of having a tiger by the tail than my American audience. Presentations remain the process of transporting the message in your mind to the minds of your audience. The fewer barriers, transfers, and impediments involved in this process, the better your presentation will be received. The talented young lady who translated that book into Mandarin Chinese became as much a part of that presentation as I am to my readers in Asia. Some people's presentations are singular, but most often a presentation involves a collaboration. My book, The Ultimate Life, was turned into a movie that was directed by Michael Landon Jr. People throughout the last half of the 20th century knew his father, Michael Landon Sr., as the star of several popular and long-running television series. Michael Landon Sr. presented his message each week to television audiences around the world in collaboration with the other cast members involved in the series. Michael Landon Jr. focuses his presentation skills on being a director and working behind the camera. While his performance may not be as readily apparent, it is just as important, if not more important, than the performance of the actors whom he directs. Quality collaborations are an invaluable element of most presentations. It might seem that you are simply reading words on the page that I have written, and the only people involved in this presentation are me and you as the presenter and audience. Nothing could be further from the truth. As a blind person, I cannot read printed pages, and I have never learned how to type. These words you are reading, and all of the words in my 30 books, 1,000 newspaper columns, and various screenplays are dictated to my talented colleague, Dorothy Thompson. Dorothy remains among the best editors and grammarians in the publishing industry. The words you are reading would never have been typed or printed without Dorothy's involvement in my presentation. Furthermore, the book you are holding is also a presentation of my esteemed co-author, Dr. Ray Hull. Our combined work in this volume was brought to life first by our mutual colleague and friend at the U.S. Department of Education, Joanne McCann. Joanne had the insight to see that putting Ray and me together could result in 1 + 1 = 10. Then this book became a reality because of my publisher, David Wilderson, and his talented team at Sound Wisdom Publishing. The involvement of printers, truckers, warehouse people, bookstore employees, and others brought this book to you. When it comes to presenting, the words of the great poet John Donne, "No man is an island," are 100% true. Your conviction, passion, and energy will always be a part of your presentation regardless of the platform you utilize. People will be more attracted to your message and embrace it based on the height of your emotion as opposed to the depth of your knowledge. The old adage that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care will apply to every formal, informal, or casual presentation you make. Emotion and passion can be delivered in a number of ways. Powerful lines, memorable quotes, and poignant poetry can indelibly and impactfully deliver your message to your audience. While you always want to have high energy, enthusiasm, and emotion as a part of your presentation, never forget that silence can be as persuasive as any oration. I have worked with the esteemed actor Brian Dennehy in 2 of the movies based on my novels. Many actors try to lobby or encourage a movie's writers or director to give them more lines than the script originally called for. Brian, on the other hand, often will ask a director if he can leave out lines, preferring to make his presentation non-verbally. Some of the best movie scenes involving Brian Dennehy have little or no dialogue. What you don't say and how you don't say it can be as impactful as anything you might say. Throughout recorded history, many of the most powerful and enduring presentations involved storytelling. Storytelling is both an art and a science. Powerfully delivered stories can both compress and maximize your presentation. A presenter can struggle through many points over a long period of time trying to express a concept, or they might simply refer to Jack and the Beanstalk, It's a Wonderful Life, The Good Samaritan, or Rocky. The mere mention of a powerful story that has become a part of our culture can take your audience to a different time and place and impactfully deliver an emotional message. The most powerful stories are your own. Great presenters develop signature stories that permanently connect them with their audience in much the same way that enduring hit songs connect singers with their fans. I have paid huge amounts of money and stood in long lines to go to a concert in order to hear one of my favorite performers sing a song that is in my own album collection at home. It's not about the song, it's about the experience. One of my signature stories that I utilize in virtually every speech is about a young boy named Christopher. If you want to experience the Christopher story, you can see it as a part of a video from one of my arena speeches by going to JimStovall.com. I have met people who have traveled great distances and sat in my audience multiple times to hear the Christopher story again or share it with friends and family members they brought to my events. As described earlier, you must put yourself in the picture when you're creating an impactful story to be a part of your presentation. Your audience is much more willing to allow you to give them your message when you give them a part of yourself. Just as we more readily accept advice or recommendations from people we know, people will embrace your presentation if they feel like they know you. Vulnerability, authenticity, and transparency should be a part of every presentation. People will be comfortable with what you say as soon as they are comfortable with who you are.